Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And it's good to see you all here today. So, we've been discussing the Dhammapada, an early Buddhist compilation of verses reportedly quoted from the Buddha or perhaps from his followers and recorded in the Pali language a couple hundred years after the Buddha's death. The chapter we'll be talking about today is entitled Violence. Violence. Dandavaga, meaning verses about literally the rod or verses about punishment. But most translators into English have used the word violence, including Gil Fonsdal, whose translation we're relying on primarily. So the literal meaning rod or punishment suggests that it's the violence associated with retribution that the Buddha is primarily talking about. A visitor from another planet might think that we have an extraordinarily intense fascination with violence. I mean, if you look through the news feeds, I picked one day of Google News headline feeds and picked out keywords going through the various articles that were referred to. Strike, obliterate, warn, shut down, bombing, threaten, attacks, disappeared, seizure, provoke, assassination, terrorism, fighting. So a seemingly disproportionate attention to violence of action and speech. And much of our entertainment media reflects this as well, movies and books and plays about conflict, often physical violence, but certainly violent speech. It's undoubtedly captivating. It catches our interest and holds our attention, which is part of the point. So, what does this chapter say about violence? I'm going to read some selections from it, including one short verse from later that is related to the topic. All tremble at violence, all fear death. Seeing others as being like yourself, do not kill or cause others to kill. All tremble at violence. Life is dear for all. Seeing others as beings like yourself, do not kill or cause others to kill. If desiring happiness, you use violence to harm living beings who desire happiness, you won't find happiness later on. Don't speak harshly to anyone. What you say will be said back to you. Hostile speech is painful. and you will meet with retaliation. But if, like a broken bell, you do not reverberate, then you have attained nirvana, and no hostility is found in you. Um, an alternative, more literal translation of that last verse. If, like a cracked gong, you silence yourself, you have already attained nibbana. No vindictiveness will be found in you. Where in this world does one find someone restrained by conscience, who knows little of blame, as a good horse knows little of the whip? Like a good horse, aware of the whip, be ardent and alert, with faith, virtue, effort, concentration, and discernment, accomplished in knowledge and good conduct, mindful, you will leave this great suffering behind. And finally, victory gives birth to hate. The defeated sleep in anguish, giving up both victory and defeat. Those who have attained peace sleep happily. So the Buddha here comes across fairly strongly as being opposed to violent speech and action. And he reflected this in his life after he attained enlightenment. But one might say he's addressing sort of interpersonal violence, the sort of thing where we interact day to day with others. Avoid retaliation, retribution, avoid harsh speech, avoid certainly causing intentional harm to others. And you might say, well, that's one thing, but how about state-sponsored violence? What about that? What about self-defense? What about just wars? And all of the great religious traditions, including Buddhism, have at some time or another found a way to justify wars. This has been reflected in, for instance, in the 20th century and in the early 21st century in some Buddhist countries. For instance, Japan invading China during the 1930s to free them from communism, justification there. And then we have more recently in Sri Lanka, the Buddhists battling the Hindus, the Tamil Tigers, the Hindus. And then there's even currently in Myanmar, driving out the driving out the Muslim population from northern Myanmar, and the monks serving a direct collaborative effort there to rid the country of Muslim people and influence, causing much harm, distress, and death. So there are some exceptions, like the smaller religious sects, like the Quakers and the Mennonites, the Amish, who oppose any kind of violence, including state-sponsored violence. But one might then object and say, well, they're just abdicating their responsibility for defense and security and peace to others who are willing to commit these acts. So clearly, the human species has not resolved this issue. And to this day, results in more lethal violence again and again in order to accomplish some perceived goal, with a justification of achieving greater happiness and security in the future. Because, of course, all sides of a war consider the war justified. So there are certainly limits to what individuals such as us can do about all of this. But one thing that is clear is that the Buddha counsels us strongly to avoid violence in our own affairs, violence of body, speech, and mind. Even the little things, the little violences of disparagement or belittling of others in one way or another. Because most of us don't really engage in killing or direct injury, bodily injury to others intentionally. But there are those little violences that can lead to greater violence in the future. The Buddha very strongly promoted ahimsa, non-harming, in our activities. And particularly in the last section here that I read, from the chapter, encourages us to maintain vigilance, attentiveness to such things. Where in the world does one find someone restrained by conscience who knows little of blame, as a good horse knows little of the whip? Like a good horse, aware of the whip, be ardent and alert, with faith, virtue, effort, concentration and discernment, accomplished in knowledge and good conduct, mindful, you will leave this great suffering behind. So I think this practice, meditation practice, the practice of study of the Buddha's teachings and the commentaries that arise from it, and self-reflection, reviewing our speech and action, noticing the effect of what we do and say, learning from it, with the intention of minimizing harm, is the Buddha way. And it is an all-day, everyday process, completely absorbing this awareness. So I think I'll stop there, and I guess obviously there are questions about the use of violence, the appropriate use of violence, if there is any. The Buddha seemed to be telling us that through at least one story, that he really didn't advocate much, even in the way of self-defense. That when the king from the adjacent kingdom came to slaughter the inhabitants of his own kingdom, where his relatives were, the Shakya kingdom, he tried on multiple occasions to talk the attacking king out of it, but ultimately, unsuccessfully, he sat in meditation as the armies of the attackers slaughtered his relatives. Is that what we want to advocate? I'll just leave you with that thought. And we'll go into breakout rooms with consideration of both interpersonal violence, especially the subtle forms, and state-sponsored violence. Thank you for listening.